You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, I think we're going to get underway right now. Good evening. Okay, all right, as we're live streaming. My name is Robert Bell. I am a director at the Connecticut Department of Transportation in the Bureau of Policy and Planning. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you all for coming. The order of events will be, I have some civil rights information to read to kick off all our public meetings that we do. Then I'll do some introductions. Then I have some brief opening remarks, and we'll have a few opening remarks also from the first selectman from each town. I also want to recognize that Senator Cohen is here in the audience too. And then after the opening remarks, we're going to kick into the full presentation, and then we'll have question and answer at the end.
State Representative Blair Rader's here as well.
Oh, I am very sorry. Good evening, Representative. So let me start off with our civil rights information. And no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. Thank you. There is a voluntary post-meeting survey, and there is also civil rights information. And I do want to also say that the presentation will be posted to our website after the meeting too. So this information will be available there as well. And a recording of this presentation will be posted to YouTube after the event, and closed captioning, including non-English translation options, will be available after the meeting. Title VI notice to the public. The Connecticut Department of Transportation operates its programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Any person who believes he or she has been aggrieved by any unlawful discriminatory practice under Title VI may file a complaint with Connecticut DOT. And for more information on Connecticut DOT's civil rights program and the procedures to file a complaint, people may contact the Connecticut DOT Title VI coordinator at 860-594-2169, TRS 711, or via email to deborah.goss@ct.gov, or visit our administrative office at 2800 Berlin Turnpike in Newington, Connecticut. And information about how a complaint may be filed directly with the Federal Transit Administration or the Federal Highway Administration is shown here on the screen, and also again will be part of the presentation posted to our website. Okay. All right, so I'm Robert Bell with Connecticut DOT. Most of you I do not know. A few of you I have met through our working group, which you'll hear more about in a little bit. Let me introduce the project team, and we have Patrick Zapatka, a supervisor in the Bureau of Policy and Planning at Connecticut DOT, and David Elder, assistant director with the Office of Strategic Planning at Connecticut DOT. David is also the chair of our Scenic Roads Committee. Also, our consultant who we're working with on this project from VHB, we have Dan Amstutz, and we have Joe Balskas. And that is our core team. We have other people from the department who are working with us, and we also have a working group made up of citizens and town officials and people from other state agencies. And again, we'll have some slides on that in a little bit. Okay, why are we here tonight? First of all, we want to provide an overview of the beginning of the development of this corridor management plan that we're working on with Guilford and Branford. The plan is for the entire 13-mile stretch of the corridor. And the purpose of a corridor management plan is to ensure that the Route 146 is a safe, accessible, natural, and cultural treasure for the community, now and in the future, and also for anyone traveling along the road. A corridor management plan differs from a corridor study, and us who work on this all the time, for us, it's a clear difference. But for a lot of people, plan or study, what's the difference between the two? Well, a corridor management plan takes a very broad view of the corridor, unlike a corridor study, which really assesses specific needs and problems and proposes solutions or proposed projects for those specific needs and problems. But a corridor management plan takes a much broader view. It sets forth broader interests and goals. It does not specify a proposed project when we issue the final plan. It takes a comprehensive consideration of the cultural and historic and environmental resources along the corridor. And it sets parameters for future transportation projects to take into account early on during the future scoping and design process when those projects occur. And also a corridor management plan has a significant public engagement process, probably more so than a corridor study does. What a corridor management plan is not, and I should, in saying what it's not, I do want to acknowledge that we know there's a lot of interest in some very specific facilities along the corridor. For example, the Crabbing Bridge. We know people have significant interest in what that will look like when the DOT comes back out with any design plans for that facility. But the corridor management plan is not going to propose or present that kind of level of specificity. The Crabbing Bridge, as an example, that the design is on the back burner until the corridor management plan can get rolling and engage with the community and develop that context. So the context for the cultural, historical, environmental resources, so that future projects can be designed in a context-sensitive way to make sure that those interests are brought into account very early on during scoping and design. Where are we in this process? And I just have to say, first of all, you're going to hear more about all these issues in a little bit. So I'm going to end very quickly here. We're at the very beginning stages. We developed and brought together a working group, citizens and representatives from both towns and other state agencies. This is our first public information meeting. We've had 3 working group meetings already, and that's where we are in the process. There's going to be a lot more public engagement in the summer and the fall prior to finalizing what this plan will be. So, those are my opening remarks. We have a few other opening remarks from First Selectmen from each town, and Jamie, if you want to come up first. And if you want to use the handheld microphone, I believe they are on, or if you want to use the podium.
Okay, it's on. All right, thank you, Robert. Just briefly, I just want to welcome everybody here to the town of Branford. As those who don't know, I am First Selectman for the town of Branford, Jamie Cosgrove. I just thank you, Robert, for going over and explaining the differentiating between a corridor study and a corridor management plan. Because as many of you know, this initially began several years ago when the towns of Branford and Guilford applied for through our COG to do a corridor study. Early on in that process, or as that process, it was very clear that there was a lot of interest in that study and really what was going to be the outcome and proposed. You know, we all recognize Route 146 really is a corridor, a scenic highway that comes through, connects green to green, goes through business districts and neighborhoods. It goes through our scenic natural resources. Some of the most beautiful areas along our shoreline is right through 146. And this plays a large part in really defining the character of our respective communities. right? The place that we all call home. And I think, early on, we recognized that perhaps we need to take a step back. And I acknowledge Sean Scanlon, now Comptroller Sean Scanlon, State Senator Christine Cohen, and we had convened a meeting, or Sean convened a meeting with representatives from DOT to talk about having this management plan. This is a much better approach because we don't want to have projects where we experience incremental loss in that character of our respective communities. We want to make sure, yes, there are things that we need to address, but again, it should be mindful of what we're trying to preserve, and which is ultimately the character of our communities. With that, thank you for your participation. Thank you to the staff that has been involved on this, for both of and the volunteers that have been involved in this through the beginning and will be throughout the project. And thank you to DOT and VHB for hosting this tonight. Matt?
Thank you, Jamie. You're never supposed to follow a good public speaker, so my remarks will be a little bit briefer. What I think we have here tonight is the perfect example of how a democratic process works. The corridor study started, and the corridor study didn't seem to be satisfying the populace. There was significant input from members of both communities, and I have to thank the COG, and I think Laura Francis from the COG, our transportation director, is here tonight, that they said, this needs to move on to something beyond what we can do here. So I want to thank all of those individuals who participated in voicing their opinions, their concerns about the way the corridor plan was going. So this, I think, is a much more wholesome and holistic look at what we need to do. Jamie was pretty clear about that. And what we are doing here tonight, and I'm going to just steal off your paper, right? The CMP for Route 146 will help guide possible future changes to the corridor, make it safer for everyone who travels it, to maintain its infrastructure, and to better protect from sea level rise and flooding. All of those issues are important to me and members of my community, all right? The last one is probably the most significant for me, because if we bury our heads in the sand around sea level rise, Route 146, you're going to need a canoe in some areas to get across it. So I think there's a significant opportunity here to address all of the issues that are facing us on Route 146. Now, I anticipate this is going to be a wonderful meeting, exchange of ideas, and a civil discourse. Because I had a choice tonight to go to one of two meetings. This one or the second environmental assessment hearing for Tweed New Haven Airport. And I can assure you, just looking around the room, that I think I made the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we have a member of our corridor working group who's going to come up and with some opening remarks on behalf of the working group, Carol Lee Hall. Thank you, Carol.
Good evening, everybody. There's hardly anything I can say that hasn't already been said, both by Mr. Bill and the Honorable First Selectman of the town, so I'll keep my spiel short. I'm here to welcome you all on behalf of the Corridor Management Working Group, which is composed of members of the town government, members, that is the staff, citizens of the town, somebody from DEEP, lots of people from DOT, am I thinking SCROG, people from SCROG, and I hope I'm not thinking, the Connecticut Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board. Now, all those people, and a wide range of them, are going to be saying as much as possible about the process as it takes place, but that doesn't mean that isn't going to hear everything that we aren't going to hear, and they aren't going to hear everything you have to say. And that's the emphasis that I'm going to talk about tonight, very briefly. This is the beginning of the process, and in my experience, as an advocate for the environment, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we in the public feel that we come in after the major decisions are being made, and that isn't the case here. I'm happy to say that we are now beginning the process of planning, and it will be a collaborative process that engages the public and listens to what the public has to say. So if you'll join me on the great adventure on our wonderful 146, it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight.
Thank you very much. And now, Joe, are you up next? And we start a more interesting set of slides than a slide that says opening remarks.
Actually, that was a slide that was supposed to be up while Carol was talking, so sorry about that. All right, Joe Balskis, project manager for the project. Delighted to be here, and I'm going to just do a quick intro of the project itself. Can you hear me okay back there? Again, Joe Balskis from VHB, and this is a map that's, we actually have the map on the back of the room as well. We have two boards there. The plan is to do a little presentation, questions and answers, and then afterwards, if anyone wants to hang around, we can go and talk to the boards, any specific questions. We also have a computer which has, we have an aerial map that we can go right into your address. If you have some technical issues you want to talk about, we can bring it up on the computer screen and take notes too. So after the Q&A, we can do that as needed. Okay. So you've heard a lot about the corridor itself. It's 13 miles long, as you may all know. I've driven it. I've driven it many times. I've ridden my bike on this as well. So I think I've got a perspective. I was involved in the earlier study that was mentioned, and we had talked back then about some more public engagement. So this is great to be involved with this project. That was Branford, is the Guilford section. So we have some more extensive mapping we're putting together for the project. This is just an overall view. When you have 13 miles, it's kind of hard to put that on a plan. We did a test plot, and we had like 30 feet of plan. So we wanted to try and condense it to something that you can understand and see. So what is the corridor itself? Quick overview. You heard a lot talk about it. It is a designated state scenic roadway for nearly all 13 miles. It's National Register Historic District, as you see here. It is unique. We all know that. We've talked about that. You've heard the comments about that. I'm not going to go into detail about that. There's a lot of historic homes along there. There's obviously wildlife habitats, tidal marshes, and terrific scenic views that we all know. Out of varying land uses. You heard the green to green. That's the first I heard that. It's a great statement about the project itself. It's green to green, which makes perfect sense. And that there is residential in the coastal section. There's a lot of rural character to the roadway, as we all know. And undulating curves, which can be challenges for someone on a bike, in some locations, as we know. It's a nominal 24-foot wide road. In some sections, there's no shoulders. Many sections there are shoulders, if you will, beyond the lane. It is designated as a bike route in the western section, not the eastern section of the route itself. We know it parallels Amtrak. It goes underneath Amtrak a couple times, and also the private rail crossings for the quarry. We also know, as was talked about, the flooding, recurring flooding issues, and it's only going to get worse. We talked about it with a previous study of a 20-inch sea level rise by 2040 is being forecast. So that's part of the project as well. So the background itself, you heard a lot about the differences. I'm not going to go into that. It is a big picture plan level document. It's we have an example of one I'll talk about in a minute, but it's as we said, holistically looking at it. It's not just looking at the engineering aspect. It's looking at the holistic view of the corridor. And you heard about community engagement. This is our first public information meeting. More to come. You heard Dan will talk about that more in the future. But we want to focus on some unique qualities. That's something we learned in the previous corridor study, the historic and the cultural and environmental, not just the engineering part of it, and what makes this corridor special. And it is much different when you ride a bike or walk versus being in the car, as we all know. So that's something we're going to be doing as a corridor working group. We're going to do some field walks as part of our corridor working group. So the plan itself is going to help guide some future if there's need for safety improvements, for maintenance, for climate resiliency, that we'll be talking about, sea level rise and flooding. We'll be looking at those as well. So what is this? So we're going to find an example. There's one right now that was done in eastern Connecticut. It was Route 169 through the eastern section of Connecticut, from Brooklyn, Killenly, Putnam areas. And I actually have a copy of it on the table. You just Google that or chat GPT for it, whatever you want to do. You can find it, Route 169, CMP, Corridor Management Plan like ours. And it'll give you an example of what was done in 85 as well as what was done in 2016. It's a little different document. It was more economic versus this one. We're not worried about that in the sense this is more cultural, historical, environmental, but it does give you some of the framework that we'll be talking about as part of this project. So it's Route 169 in the Eastern Connecticut section. So Route 146 also had a corridor management plan done previously, 1996. Some of you may have been involved with it. It was combined with Route 146 and Route 77, another wonderful roadway in the town of Guilford. And we've drawn from that in terms of what we're doing here. And there's a vision in that one, and both of those focus on preservation. So, how do we get here? You heard us talked about the previous corridor study. I'm not going to read the language here from that and what we had for purpose. There was an existing conditions report completed in that in 2021 that is available, and we're going to talk about that. We've updated that for this study. But we realized, as was said, during that effort, during the public engagement, and that was during the pandemic as well. So it was a little more difficult. That was early part of the pandemic. It's a little difficult to do the public engagement. However, we did hear loud and clear that there's a need to do something differently, and that's why we're here. So what guides a corridor management plan? And it is different in a corridor study. And what we're following is the Federal Highway Administration. The Federal Highway Administration governs Connecticut DOT and the policies and processes. So we look to that document from Federal Highway, and there's 14 steps here, 14 items here list that we look towards for doing a corridor management plan. I'm not going to read all of them for you, but you can see there's certainly many that pertain to this. Obviously, number 7, a corridor safety analysis. We're doing that. Stakeholders involved with it. We're doing that. Obviously, this is one of our first public information meeting. Corridor mapping. Number 2, assessment of intrinsic qualities and context of the areas along the corridors. That's one of the key things that we're doing as part of this. So with that, Dan, take over for goals.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Amstutz. I'm with VHB, so we're working with Joe and with the Connecticut DOT on this project on the corridor management plan. So these are the goals, as we've already talked about a number of them, that are really weaved into the way that we're looking at the corridor as part of the management plan. So certainly safety is a really critical piece of this, and involving the community is absolutely, as we've talked about, and I'll talk about a little bit more about the different community engagement activities that we're going to be doing over the course of the plan, and protecting those natural and cultural resources that make this corridor particularly unique. All of these different pieces we want to have in the plan to address, or how we're going to address them in the future, in order to make sure that the corridor is a robust and wonderful corridor that everybody knows it is, while still preserving safety and maintaining infrastructure and these different pieces that are important for maintaining and ensuring the safety of a road overall. And also establishing this working group, which we have talked about already, which I'll get to in just a minute again. But the basic outline of the plan that we're working from is that we're updating the existing conditions that we did for the corridor study. So we're going back to that and making sure that we've got more information and more up-to-date information for that. And part of this will also be a looking at the context of the road and how we can design to that context. And this is a conceptual sort of design. It's not, as we said before, isn't going to create projects out of it, but it's going to speak more towards how those future projects may get done or designed, again, towards the context of the road itself. And also, we've heard about the coastal flooding, and that is something that we did as part of the corridor study, but we're going to update that as well to do an analysis of that, and then look at, again, to the future strategies of how we look at the road and how we update the road when needed, but again, looking into the context of how that should be done, and weaving in the community involvement throughout, which I'll talk about on this slide. We've got a study website that's up now. I hope people have seen it. It's route146cmp.com, and this is an image on the right from that website. We'll be doing a public survey later on in the project, a more formal public survey. We take comments and questions through the website or through the email over the course of the project, but we'll have a more formal survey. We have the public information meetings. We're having this one today, and we'll have at least 3 more along the course of the project. And we'll also be, of course, coordinating with the towns of Guilford and Branford to ensure that they're aware of what's going on and how the project is progressing. I'll talk about a little bit later on the stakeholder focus group meetings, where we'll talk to more representatives from key organizations and individuals that will help us understand more about different aspects of the corridor. And we'll also be doing a corridor field walk with the working group actually pretty shortly, in a few weeks. But I'll just, again, briefly touch on the corridor working group. And we have this working group, which we've talked about. And so what is it doing? It's really helping us guide the process for this and the development of the framework for what the plan ends up being, evaluating these context-sensitive approaches that we're doing, and again, really giving us good feedback, looking at the stakeholders, and we'll do the corridor walk, and then participating in these public engagements. So they're a really important part of this project and a part of the public engagement process that we're doing. We showed this slide a little bit earlier, but just for a moment show that we've got a number of people from the Connecticut DOT, but also from the towns of Branford and Guilford, to ensure that there's a mix of municipal staff that are involved, but also residents that are involved in this as well. And also having other agencies that are outside or more regional in nature, or that may have a different viewpoint, again, to understand that we're looking at sort of the whole picture of the corridor, not simply one single thing like just traffic or just the roadway itself. So I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk about where we are with the existing conditions and where we've updated that. These are the basic elements that we have looked at that I'm going to go through really quickly and just talk about how we've incorporated pieces from each one. And one of the first things we did was look at what's happening out there on the road. There are things that are still changing on the road. There are plans or projects that are occurring that we want to look at. What new projects have come up there? What changes, maybe some properties that may have changed the features of the road or how people interact with it. And we've also been looking at some recent plans and some ongoing studies that also may affect Route 146 in the future, and understand how they can be understood as part of this planning process. There are a number of things that are under construction. Most particularly, these are all in Branford, but there's the Sybil Creek Bridge is still, I believe, still being replaced. That goes along Route 146. This Parkside Village is affordable housing project in Branford as well, right along Route 146. And also there's been a few new housing developments. There's not very many, but this one sort of stuck out as the one on the upper right is at the corner of, I think, Blackstone Ave and 146, and it cleared out a lot of vegetation and everything that I think was, blocking some views before. But anyway, it's a, significant developments like this are things that we're looking for. And then some things have been more recently completed. There is a project at Limewood Ave and sidewalks on the seawall there that was recently done. And so now you can walk along the seawall here, along Limewood Ave, Route 146 in Branford. There is a safety audit that was done last year that looked at a particular section of 146 between Limewood and I believe the Branford River, and that made some recommendations and suggestions about what could be done to help make that section better for people biking and walking and vulnerable users. There was this is a little bit outside, but there's some sidewalks on Route 1 near 146, and then there was in Guilford on Boston Street recently some new sidewalks. So these are the kinds of things that we've picked up and say these are some things that are a little bit different on the corridor. So briefly just going through the safety data, we've compared the 3 years that we did in the quarter study to more recently the last 3 years to understand if there's been any major differences, particularly with COVID. In general, the big picture is that not a lot has really shifted. It's a fairly similar amount of crashes that have happened between those 3 years, the first 3 years we looked at and the more recent 3 years, as well as the types of collisions are fairly similar. And in terms of when we look at crashes, we also look at severity. When people get into a crash, are they getting hurt? Are they getting injured? Or is it a property damage only? So this is, again, just looking at those different collisions and saying, has there been major differences here? And again, the story is that there hasn't really been much change in just the types of those collisions. One of the things that we did previously was also look at the historic resources that are along the corridor. And we have made some revisions to the maps. So we have a document. We'll have a existing conditions update document that will be coming out shortly. And we've made some changes between the quarter study maps and these maps, partly to match what the State Historic Preservation Office has been doing with their efforts. And so we've removed certain things that were very far away from the corridor, added some things that we perhaps didn't have before, and just made it more tight and accurate than I think what we had in the previous version. So to match, again, what the state data has. In terms of land use and wetlands, again, we sort of looking at this, some of this hasn't changed a whole lot in the last few years. Maybe most significantly, Guilford is updating their zoning and subdivision regulations, but not much has changed on wetlands information. And again, there'll be more detail in the report that we have for this, but there was some new federal funding that came in the last couple of years with some of the new transportation and infrastructure bills that did provide some more money for scenic byways, especially national scenic byways. But that's, again, just some information we've collected. And then finally, the traffic volumes and speeds, we did go out and collect new data on volumes, speeds, and vehicle types. They were collected a couple of months ago, so they do show a difference between the previous data collected, partly because they were done in different seasons. That previous data was collected in June or July, I believe, and the DOT also has a lot of traffic counters that they have along there that can provide us a lot of data too, and we will go over that in the report. But we do plan on collecting additional data in the summer to supplement all the data that we have now. So finally, moving on, this is the general overall schedule for the project, which again we expect to complete in about a year. Right now we're winter, spring. We're doing our update on existing conditions, collected data, doing community outreach. We'll be doing more work on the context-sensitive design approaches in the next couple of months, and start again looking at the flooding risk piece of this. And we expect to do more community outreach, which I'll talk about on the next slide, in the fall, and really get into sort of the meatier aspects of the plan. And then, again, hope to finalize in about a year from now. And then what's going on more in the next couple of months is that we do plan to do a corridor field walk with our working group in the next couple of weeks, and that we have these stakeholder interviews, so representative interviews, where we're going to talk to, again, certain representative groups that I'll talk about on the next slide before we finish up, we've done one, and we'll continue to do them over the next couple of months. And then more public information and the survey we expect to have this fall, and we'll continue to meet with our working group. As mentioned before, we've met with them 3 times already, and they've been really, really great to help guide this process and help us understand how we need to approach it. And so very briefly, these are the kinds of stakeholder groups we're talking about, and they sort of fall into different themes around emergency management, environmental land issues or water issues, as well as economic development. Again, shows you really the comprehensive view that we're taking beyond, beyond a typical traffic or corridor study, which may look mainly at the transportation piece of it. So with that, I think I will turn it over to, who's finishing, or Patrick, are you finishing up?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Dan.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Once again, my name is Patrick Zapak. I'm the project manager. And I just wanted to state something really quickly that Rob touched about in the beginning is not only are we coming out doing this corridor management plan, but the department has a huge culture change. And I really think it's important to note that we're really looking to build stronger relationships and partnerships with our municipalities, with our advocacy groups, and with the general public. So yes, it's very public forward-facing, we're getting out there, but we really want to hear from you. We're really looking to build those relationships that may have been deteriorated in the past. So moving forward, I'm going to open up for question and answer. And I think our format is, we'd ask that you can come to the podium over here, and if you just speak into the microphone, you can say your name or affiliation. You don't have to do that. And we have a handheld too, so I can come to you if you'd like. I'm pretty easy, so thank you. Would you like me to bring you the remote? Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for including us in this process. I really appreciate. It's not on. Hello? There we go. Sweet. My name is Jill Sparks. I'm a Stony Creek resident. First off, thank you to all of you for your effort and your work so far on the project and your consideration to our community, the connection. I love the green to green idea. Speak up. Question, my big question has to do with the scheduling and when we are when you're going to take community involvement in terms of questioning. And it looked like in your sort of design plan that you would have sort of a draft design before it was brought to the community for input. Is that correct? And can you go back a few slides just on what that scheduling was?
Is that it?
That was the one. So where you have that context-sensitive design approach, is that sort of a draft solution or approach to it, and then you reach out to us in the fall? So I'm just kind of wondering.
So as we go through this, everything we posted on our website for updates, this process is going to be very transparent, so everybody knows what's going on all the time with our corridor working group. And yes, we're going to have a draft concept, but I think it's not a concept where you visualize like we're going to build something or an actual project. It's the concept of a framework that we're going to take an approach when we want to come to you guys for ideas for improvements. So for an example, if we want to make a roadway improvement, we would take into consideration environmental, the intrinsic qualities. Are we looking to incorporate bicycle pedestrian? Maybe it's just vehicle traffic, something like that, but it's like a framework or a checklist. We're going to come to you first. So we're not going to do any concept designs or any actual like images of projects at all.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. I think a lot of the ways we ask a question can then lead the answer. So
Yeah.
Having the community input along that process is terrific. On the website, is there a place to sort of offer concepts or considerations? Just
Absolutely.
General, okay, great,
There's,
answered.
there's like a tab. I don't know.
Okay,
Put that last
that's
slide
great.
up again.
You've answered my questions. Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you all.
So just with that slide, we have a portion for comments too, and then, if you're having a hard time trying to get it out, you can just leave us your name and number, and we can contact you. I will call you, and we can sit down and have a conversation over the phone, if that helps as well. Thank you.
I can bring this to you, if that works. I'm loud and obnoxious anyhow. Can you hear me?
I love it. Yes.
Okay. Everyone knows me. I'm Jay Medlin. I have owned Medlin's Farm. My question is, this is a pretty unique thing doing this, and there's a lot of questions to be addressed here. But what about the emergency situations like you showed at Sawmill Road where the road is flooding and collapsing and the railroad bridge at Guilford Branford line? Are you going to do a patch job there for now or what?
That's definitely something we would look into.
Yeah.
I think before the state would go out and make any type of improvement, we would contact the municipality, probably the town engineer and the first select person, to let them know, like, hey, we have a safety concern in the area. There's going to be that communication between the Department of Transportation and the municipality.
Because now we're in an emergency situation there, you know, it's just, the whole berm's gone at the Branford-Gilbert line now that was there. It was about 5, 6 feet tall when I was a kid, and it's all eroded out because Hurricane Gloria basically knocked that down. It's flooded ever since. And then at Sawmill Road, when they redid the bridge at Jarvis Creek, they lowered the whole damn road down, which didn't make any sense. And then, of course, the dike went, and it just floods constantly at, you know, Perigee Tide. So we have to end up going Sawmill Road, which is basically a one-car road, you know, and it's just, you know, getting difficulty getting in and out there. But, you know, I didn't know if you could just patch certain areas before you go through and make the road wider and safer, so.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah, great, thanks. Anybody? You go.
Hello, I'm Steve Wolfson. I live at the intersection of Moose Hill and 146. There's a westbound traffic nearing that intersection comes around a curve, and there's no way of telling whether it's coming. Unless you listen real carefully, you can hear the wheels on the pavement. But that's the only warning that if you try to cross 146, you're about to get killed. It's difficult with standard cars, but with the electric cars, it's really difficult because you have to listen real carefully then. The engine makes no noise, but the tires make some noise. And it's really a hazard. Westward traffic coming across Moose Hill and 146. I'm not expert enough to suggest what you need to do. Perhaps a traffic light, perhaps a stop sign, but something needs to be done.
Thank you. We'll take that into consideration. Safety is always one of our number one concerns.
Yeah, Bob Yarrow. Just to add to that is that the crossing there is to the town beach, to Shell Beach. So there's a lot of pedestrian traffic there. We have one paraplegic, you know, who goes across twice a day with his dog, and it's an accident waiting to happen. So you know, and there are probably several other places along the roadway. I think we appreciate that safety was the number one thing on the list. I also want to comment just on the change in culture at ConnDOT, is that it really is palpable to see you know, we've got senior staff here who are taking this project and input from the community very seriously. I'm a member of the working group, and I just have to say how much I've been impressed already by the serious approach that the ConnDOT and their consultants are taking to this process. It's a big change, and your predecessors didn't always have, you know, what I would call a good bedside manner, but you guys are doing a terrific job. So we look forward, I think, to collaborating with you to make this work.
Thank you, Bob.
Kevin, I'm not sure if that microphone is on.
Testing.
Oh, it
You
is?
got
Okay.
to get in there.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening. Steve Angelo. I'm a previous Branford resident, and I live in Guilford now. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've rode my bike over 146. It's one of my, I could close my eyes, I feel I can go back and forth. I know the road so well. So this means a lot. No, I'll try not. So this means a lot to me, what happens with 146. One of the things that I recalled is during the corridor study presentations, there was some discussion around this 146 actually being considered a highway. And so that obviously set up some competing, ideas about what's going to be the main thrust of what happens with 146. Are we looking at this as a true car thoroughfare when 95 gets blocked off or Route 1 gets blocked off and so people have another way? Or are we going to look at this in terms of what it means to the pedestrians and to the cyclists who are on this all the time? So is there anything that you can give us tonight that we can have some type of input about? Because right now it's just what I've seen is around the scheduling, and I love the transparency, but is there anything that you can share with us tonight about where you think you're going to go in terms of the different competing priorities here?
So we're not going to share concepts, but the term highway, we have all of our state highways are considered state highways regardless as to what their volume is. It's just a term we use. So if you, they're all state highways. Even Route 146, it doesn't mean that it's designed as an interstate highway. We just generally call all of our state facilities state highways. That's also the way they're talked about in statute. So that's probably why you've heard it called a state highway. The department is, one of the things Patrick said, we are a fully multimodal agency, so we will be looking to accommodate all users in all of our rights of way. So we can't always do it the way, the best that we would like to, because we are constrained by our available right of way. In this corridor, we're constrained by many natural features as well. But we are definitely going to try to identify ways to accommodate all of the users within our right of way. So that includes pedestrians, and that includes cyclists and vehicles. And if you do have ideas, we would welcome to hear, if you have other people that ride their bikes, it's good. That's why we are conducting a pretty extensive public engagement, because we do want to hear from all users, because there are going to be different perspectives based on how you use the highway or the roadway.
But given the physical limitations of the road, you're not going to be able to make everybody happy, right? I mean, if something's got to give. You can't, you're not equally going to be able to satisfy the motorists, the pedestrians, and the cyclists. So I'm just wondering, is there something?
So every project we do, you're right, we're always compromising in some way. But, New England and in New England general, we don't have the benefit of having new, open land to design new roadways. We're retrofitting, what used to be trading trails and very skinny goat paths, literally. So we're going to do the best we can to accommodate it. I do believe one of our standard design criteria we've done already is to narrow the lanes down to 10 feet where we can, which allows for a greater shoulder area for cyclists. That's going to be a challenge on this corridor as well. That's one of our lowest hanging fruits. We always try to do that, and the shoulders on this corridor may not allow for that.
And I would just like to add on too is that, with the framework for this corridor management plan, knowing that we want facilities for pedestrian and bicyclists, it's something that will also be, along with safety, like on our list as a checklist to say, hey, can we do something in this location? And how can we make this work? I mean, there are definitely challenges ahead of us.
Just as an example, we already have received some comments on the website, and one of them was from a mother who, has children that she puts in a stroller, and, she's very fearful to ever put a stroller on the roadway here, and that's understandable. So, that's a different perspective than a cyclist too, but we want to hear all of those perspectives.
Alice Stowers. I live on Quarry Road in Stony Creek. And when you talk about limiting lanes to 10 feet wide, I'd like you to come out. You say you're going to do a walking tour. I'd like you to come out during the day and watch the quarry trucks, the 18-wheelers, try to navigate the corners between the four-way stop sign in Stony Creek when you first come into the creek and Quarry Road. I used to walk that road. I don't anymore because it's not safe. So I don't know what you can do about that, because there are some sidewalks in that section but then as you start to walk the sidewalk, then it disappears. I mean, it's just not a safe road for pedestrians or bicyclists.
So it's a point well taken, and I just want to emphasize something. So someone did mention the slide that had context-sensitive design, and context-sensitive design is it's a strategy where you design a solution or improvement based on the context in which you're designing. And it may not be the same on this corridor. This corridor is very different. You have sort of the more village center areas at the green. The context or the solution in that area might be different than what it is on the rest of the corridor where you don't have any shoulders. And so that's one of the things we're going to be using as an approach to this corridor, because it's not going to be consistent through the entire 13 miles. It's going to be different in some areas. Some areas we're going to have shoulders, some areas we're not, some areas there's sidewalks, some areas there isn't. So we're going to do the best that we can based on the context of the area.
Hi, Lisa Pasco. I'm a Branford resident. Along the lines of safety, has there been any thought about lowering the speed limit in any of these areas to 15 miles an hour? Making the lanes 10 feet, or the sections 10 feet each, going at 25 miles an hour seems to be quite dangerous. And then, what was my other thing I wanted to say? Mostly about the speeding and just with how it's a narrow roadway, and thinking about 25 miles an hour. Oh, the slide that one of the slides you posted, you were speaking about greater than 10 miles over the speed limit, which is 25. But 10 miles over 25 is 40% over that speed limit. That's a big difference between comparing that to 10 miles over 55 or 65. So I wonder if we could maybe have a paradigm shift on what's acceptable over a certain speed limit in these type of roadways. Just something to consider.
Thank you for the comment or the question about speed limits and speeding. And definitely speeding is a significant issue around the state, around the country, and on 146 in terms of safety and danger to a variety of users. Generally, the approach to speeding is not just speed limits alone, but it's also trying to identify countermeasures for the physical roadway itself to accompany any lowering in speed. 25 is already actually low for a state road. Certainly 146 is unique in terms of its twists and turns and just the setting for it. So I think what we're going to be doing in the corridor management plan, we won't be lowering speed limits in the plan itself, but we'll be looking at approaches to what type of countermeasures, what kind of physical changes potentially can be built that can help lower speed by creating sort of a psychology to the driver to lower the speed. Whether it's sort of a sense of friction and a sense of nearby features which actually already exist in this road. It's shocking. I mean, it's not, should be shocking. Maybe it's not, that how fast people go on roads that clearly are not designed for that kind of speed. There's already a lot of those types of features into this road. The turns, the narrowness of the road, the adjacent structures in many cases, including ledge in many places, should be indicators for people to go slow and be careful. But we'll be taking a look at what else we can do. Conceptually, we're not going to look at any specific location and come up with a specific project proposal. But speed is certainly, a significant issue that we'll be taking a look at in the corridor management plan.
Carol Lee, did you want to say something?
I did.
Yep.
I wanted to respond to the comment, hi, how are you, about the quarry trucks. Some kinds of transportation vehicles will respond to design, but the quarry trucks are a unique, individual kind of phenomenon. And I've seen them, and I have also made complaints about them and heard about complaints from others. My only suggestion to you, apart from any miracles that the design team can suggest, is to go, we've gone to the quarry. The Scenic Roads Committee has heard comments, and we went to the quarry operators and to the first selectman, who responded quite well to the problem. And the quarry operators, for a time, instructed the truck drivers, because the problem, I think, is the truck drivers going too fast and not particularly caring what road they're on. For a short period of time, the problem seems to diminish. It means that you have to keep going back. And the more people who go back or who get in touch with the first selectman, the faster that problem is going to go away. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to tell you that, because the quarry is going to be there for a while.
I know, and I have spoken to them at the quarry, and you're right, it does last for a while. But on that road, 18-wheelers do not belong, because we are forced out of our lane when we're driving.
Yeah.
Because they're coming over the center line.
Yeah, it's a problem.
It is a problem. I don't know what you can do about it, but it's a problem.
I'd suggest the quarry.
Thank you.
Yes, hello. I'm Frank Toohill on the Branford RTM, the representative town meeting. And, you know, it's great to see everybody here. You know, it's great that this whole beautiful road is being studied in toto. You know, it's a beautiful road, Branford to Guilford, green to green, as our first selectman said. I just wanted to mention that back around 1978 or so, just after the state passed the act so that roads could be, you know, roads could be deemed to be scenic highways in our state, right? Back around 1978, the Branford Land Trust, Lauren Brown, who's here with us tonight, she came up with the idea, well, I mean, we should ask for this beautiful road, you know. So anyway, so that's what happened. She asked the Land Trust asked the state. It was one of the first, this was one of the first roads in the state to be deemed a scenic highway. So I just wanted to recognize Lauren Brown. Thank you, Lauren.
Given everything I'm hearing tonight about bicyclists and pedestrians, I'm not sure if thanks are really going to be forthcoming. And also, it was not just me, it was my husband, John Herzen. The two of us did it together with State Senator Thomas Sullivan.
It was her idea.
Anyway, but yeah, I just did want to sort of emphasize about that designation and a little bit about what it means. And everyone talks about how beautiful the road is, and part of it, of course, is the scenery and the historic resources along the road, but the other part is the actual configuration of the road bed, as these gentlemen have pointed out, the twists and the curves and the narrowness. And, you know, therein lies the dilemma. I mean, obviously, there's a big dilemma here to keep the scenic qualities of the road and make it safe for everybody. And if you all can solve this problem, we'll be quite impressed, or solve this dilemma. But just wanted to point that out.
Anybody?
Alan Fairbank, Leeds Island Road, Guilford. On the question of flood risk, how is the group going to address this issue? And what would be the result of the study of the flood risk? I think those of us who are familiar with the road, know exactly where the risk is, where the road floods all the time. So I'm concerned that you will come up with a report that identifies those places, but that no action is taken. Can we expect you to recommend the roadway to be raised in those places where it frequently floods these days? Or will that be something that has to be taken up separately?
So this is an issue that we looked at as part of the existing conditions corridor study, and we modeled the current conditions and the flooding conditions using Connecticut deep criteria, and we also forecasted to the sea level rise. So we know where the road is inundated now. We know where it's going to be inundated in the future, and we're going to be updating that data as part of this as well. So we will understand where Route 146 is underwater today and in the future, and we'll look at strategies that are involved with addressing that. Right? Not necessarily specific design projects, but strategies. And so that's what we're doing. So we can understand that. And just so we can be clear too, this is an existing conditions. We don't have we have no ideas right now of anything to be done here. I mean, nothing that we've talked about. So it's an existing condition. So what is the issue with the flooding? Where is it happening? And then as part of our strategies, as part of our framework we're developing with the corridor working group, we're going to look at those aspects of the corridor and develop that with the corridor working group before anything comes out here. So it's all done together with the corridor working group, and they're going to guide that as well. They're going to be guiding those strategies that we developed to address issues like that, address issues like safety and some sight lines at Moose Hill Road that we talked about. So things like that. That's kind of how the process is going to unfold. But yes, we are looking at the flooding and the forecasted sea level rise that has been forecasted by DEEP. Does that help? Okay.
What about action? At the end of the report, you identify the parts of the road that are inundated. And it's pretty clear that what's going to have to happen is in most places, the roadway is going to be raised by about 2 feet.
So as part of corridor working group process and with DOT is part of that. So they're going to be part of any kind of actions from strategies that are proposed as part of that. So can't speak to how it's going to happen, but the strategy for actions like that will be part of the corridor working group as part of the overall corridor management plan.
Maybe in your lifetime, maybe. Don't count on it.
Anyone else? Yep.
I'm not going to stand up because, for obvious reasons here, but my name is Charlie McClure. I've lived on Drumore Road since 1958. I now live in the old quarry, so I know 146 pretty well. At this point, I probably drive it twice a day. That road is just not. I'm a big bicyclist. I like bicycling, but I don't bicycle on 146. It's not safe. It's just not safe. And I think you can put your money into more law enforcement on that road, and lowering the speed limit is probably the quickest way to ensure safety. And I think paying for a policeman to be there more often is probably going to be a much quicker fix than anything else you can do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Perry Moreska, Branford Economic and Business Development Manager. I kind of feel your pain because we've got a beautiful road. It's got a lot of history. There are some economic benefits to it as well. If you start in the center of town and you go from where Darbar is now, going down Monowee Street, Karen's Corner, Gracious Gifts and Homes, there's sidewalks, there's parking, and the road is wide enough and pretty good to be able to see what's going on. Once you go under that bridge, everything changes. You get down where Lenny's, Guacamole's, The Stand, Indian Neck Pizza, has become back to the Indian Neck days from way back when, where it's a destination, people go there. People walk from one restaurant to the other, one business to the other. One of the main things that you have to please study and hear is, okay, sidewalks on both sides. It's important. And when they were talking about doing the bridge, that's one thing I brought up. We needed sidewalks on both sides. One thing that troubles me every time I see it is the beautiful job they did on Linden Avenue. And for the construction, everything was moved over, the utility poles, everything, to away from the side, away from the street. Looked gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. I still have a picture that I look at all the time. Then they put all the telephone poles back, the wire back, everything else. So what we had beauty there, it just got taken away again. So as you do the planning, as you do the thinking, look at it from bird's eye, street view, everything, and consider that, because this road is so beautiful. We want to keep it that way. We want to make it so that people enjoy it, but now we also have to do it safety. And we've got flooding that's a concern, so you've got to figure that out. And then we got to think, okay, somebody's going to say, let's make the road wider so that you can have bikes and you can have pedestrians, and then that's going to take away from the beauty. But if there's areas where you can put a sidewalk or a bike trail on the other side of the guardrail without disturbing the beauty, then I say go for it. We need to do it. We need to look at every section independently. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
All right. If there's no other comments, we're going to stay here. If you want to show us, we have some boards around the room. If you want to stick around and maybe show us some specific areas of concern, please feel free to do that. This is not the last time to comment. We're at the beginning of a process. Please provide comments. There's 2 links on the website in front of you that you can email us. You can also email us through the website. But by all means, we mean it very seriously. We're at the beginning of a process, and the output or the product is going to be much better if we get as much input as we can from the 2 communities. So thank you very much, and feel free to stick around. Thank you.
Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at branfordtv.org.